Okay, let's talk more about this. President Trump's trade policies and the fact they are going to have some effect on global supply chains as well as small business, as we just heard. We're joined by Anthony Chan. Anthony is a former chief economist at JPMorgan Chase. Anthony, great to have you back on. Good to see you, my friend.
Great to see you, Sean.
Okay, first, your reaction to the 90-day lower tariffs on goods in and out of China. A lot is being made of who won, who got the better deal. Now, it's certainly calming the waters, at least right now for the time being.
Well, I think it's pretty clear that both sides were hurting. Obviously, you saw the polls suggesting that a lot of people in the United States were not happy with the way that the tariff situation was being handled. And of course, in China, you heard of as many as 16 million people that could be impacted by slower demand and demand for Chinese goods. So both countries were, in fact, in a delicate situation. And I think when they sat down, that urgency was certainly expressed in the quick resolution to the tariff impasse, even though it was for only a short period of time, 90 days.
Yeah, it's interesting because some people thought those talks in Geneva may take 6 months, 8 months to come to some kind of conclusion, but man, just in a few days. So, but walk us through how the supply cost for key goods have been affected since the tariffs took effect in April.
Well, Sean, what's happened is that when you have tariffs that are in excess of 100% on both sides, you essentially see that trade comes to a standstill. And you certainly saw that in the shipping ports. You saw that in the boats that were at sea or the ships that were at sea going in both directions, that there was essentially no trade. And we know that in reality, trade between China and the United States is important. In fact, the International Monetary Fund indicated that if we have a full-fledged trade war, it would actually reduce real GDP in the United States by 0.9% and only 0.6% in China. So now, granted, the difference of 0.3% is minuscule, but it really shows you that everyone gets hurt. And we also should keep in mind that even though we hear in the United States, oh, we can survive without those products from China, we'll just consume less. The reality is that a good percentage of those products, more than 30% of those imports from China, are used as intermediate goods. Yeah. And that, of course, means that the rest of the production that takes place in the United States is going to be negatively impacted. And of course, small businesses are facing a lot of pressure because they have razor-thin margins. And so if you have these tariffs which increase the cost, it makes survival and normal business activity that much more challenging.
But Anthony, some damage has already been done. It's going to take some time to get the supply chain back up. If you looked at those ports in Los Angeles, basically vacant. So what kind of decisions, you talked about that razor-thin margin, are small business owners going to have to make about pricing, about staffing, about investment because of the Trump administration's trade policies? Uncertainty is absolutely complicating and the sort of planning and moving forward for these small businesses.
Absolutely. You saw, in fact, the National Federation of Independent Small Business survey just coming out today showing that business uncertainty is at very high levels. The index did drop from 96 to 92, but the historical average is about 68. So you could clearly see that levels of uncertainty at a very high level. So what are small businesses going to have to do? They're going to have to cut costs as much as they can. That, of course, may mean even cutting back on labor or maybe hiring less people. That slows down economic growth. That reduces the purchasing power in the economy. Remember that small businesses are responsible for as much as 80% of all the new jobs that are created. So it does reverberate through the economy very, very quickly when you have these tariffs. And frankly speaking, because of their razor-thin margins, they have no other choice but to pass most of it onto the consumer. And in fact, we've heard from surveys of the central bank, Federal Reserve has done several surveys, that many businesses have no other choice but to pass those on to the consumer. And if the tariffs are high enough and there's demand destruction, that means that those businesses will be severely impacted negatively.
You know, it's interesting because Trump was supposed to be the president, the business president, good for businesses. And, you know, you talk about the razor-thin margins. You talk about passing on to customers. How are these cost changes going to impact customer loyalty? Because that is going to affect small businesses in a huge way. And, of course, that stinging comment that's going to come back to haunt Trump, if you listen to many people, maybe kids just need $2 instead of 30. What kind of message does that send?
Well, I think America has always been a country of consumption, and to sort of now say that you need, you know, you can survive with less, it's something that we're not used to in this country. In fact, lower consumption is what slows down economic growth. That's one of the problems that China has, that they have to boost consumption. So if we were to now move in the direction of encouraging people to consume less, that would have negative implications for economic growth, businesses, expansion plans, and things like that. So I think it sends the wrong message, and I hope that this will be resolved quickly so that we don't have to go into that predicament.